Hello and welcome to At the 55, your home for OUA football. Me and Tom are back on the mics on a Thanksgiving Monday. Our hope is to get this done and get it up as quickly as possible to all of you enjoying. Hopefully you're having the day off, and if you're celebrating Thanksgiving, you're with friends, family, enjoying some good food, and even not, hopefully you just have the day off and enjoying some good food. Anyways, because good food's always good, and so is good football. And Tom, we had a shortened schedule of games this weekend, but certainly a lot of things that have us raising our eyebrows. We almost had to, we did have to kind of cut ourselves off doing the classic pod before the pod, where we were so excited about all these things that we saw. And as we're now, of course, in our week 7 review podcast, as we near the end of the season, all these things get so much more monumental when you look at the schedule. First and foremost, though, Tom, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing well, my friend. I really am. This was another fantastic week of OUA football. And just like you said, what people don't kind of realize is that you and I have such a solid chemistry back and forth that we really don't have to say a lot of things before the podcast gets going. So a lot of the times it's just kind of like right before the pod, hey, how's it going? Yeah, you ready to do this? Sure, let's get into it, and we just get going. But this week in particular, you and I just kept going back and forth so much about, hey, did you see this? Did you see that? Oh my God, this was amazing. So this is another great week, even with only 4 games going on here.
Yeah, and certainly, and I'll save this for after we do our players of the week, but I want to take a quick look at the schedule, at the standings, I should say. We'll definitely look at the schedule too, especially with some of the teams. We talked about it going into this week, the possibility, and which became a reality, of Mac beating Waterloo, Toronto picking up the win, and Queens likely getting the win against Carleton, where there is a whole bunch of stuff going on in the middle of the OUA right now that I want to take like a moment or two to peek at the actual standings. But we'll start, as we always do on the review podcasts, with a little hardware. Tom, we're a little torn on a couple of these. I think we're ultimately in alignment at the end of the day, who we say is the player of the week and who we give a shout out for. It doesn't really matter all that much one way or the other. But offensively, where are we going on this one?
So I'm going to start out with my shout out of the week for this one. Not quite enough to get the actual award, but one, Jared Kasari. He goes 26. He rushes 26 times for 231 yards, along of 28. No touchdowns on the board, but obviously those numbers are fantastic. The vision that this young man has when he hits the hole is outstanding. I said this to you before, but I'll say it here live on the pod. I think his vision as a running back is the best in the league. The way that he was able to pick through the monstrosity that is the Queens offensive line against the Carleton defensive line was just outstanding. There didn't seem to be any holes on the times that he ran through, but then he took his time, let things set up, couple cuts here and there, took off running, and he really dominated on the ground. So my shout out of the week goes to Jared Kasari. But I think when you're looking at things here, and you and I have been talking about how exciting this young player is, have to give the player of the week to Josh Jansen. Quarterback, third string quarterback for your Ottawa GGs, Mr. Bader Shamai. He goes 20 for 27, 233 yards, and 2 touchdowns against Laurier, which is one of the best defenses in the country. Like, this kid is playing lights out right now, and he's a third string quarterback.
It's amazing. He is so exciting to watch, and so I learned a lot. And it's tough when we have games at the same time, because you have to kind of pick and choose where you have the audio on. But you can learn so much from having the audio of the game on, because a lot of these commentators, most of these commentators, do a great job of finding those little tidbits. They're talking to coaches. They're doing a little background on these guys. Former CJFL guy, and it shows in just not only his stature. He's a big dude out there. I forget they listed his height and everything like that, but he just, it's a hackneyed term, and 3 games into his OUA career, maybe this is like a cold take exposed down the line, but he has that kind of pro ready look to him. He just stands there kind of statuesque in the pocket, and maybe this is one of those confirmation bias things of like, he looks like a lot of great quarterbacks we've seen before, so we just assign him to that category, but he's playing like it too. And you mentioned the 2 touchdowns. Of course, that also involves like 1 down the stretch and a 2-point convert to keep them, an onside kick's far from a sure thing, but to give them a shot at tying this game up late in the ball game. And of course, shout out to Charles Assenet for the great return that set them up for that one. But he's looking phenomenal. I mean, I'm getting excited about my GGs here, man. And, going toe to toe with a guy that, like we said last week, as you and Mad Jack Moore picked in the regular season, in the preseason to be MVP in Taylor Elgersma. And we were talking a week ago being like, though we're at our midseason point, we said, well, it's probably Evan Hillock. But if anyone were to say Taylor, nothing wrong with that. But yeah, shout out to Josh Jansen. To go back to the Queens piece, just quickly though, because Anthony Souls ends up rushing it in for 3 touchdowns as well, 98 yards. And we'll talk about this game more in totality when we get there. But I feel like whenever we see an immense rushing attack, we often then say, hey, we gave the Windsor offensive line a player of the week way back when. And then as a result, we gave Randy Beardy, the offensive line coach, sort of the offensive player of the week, totem, if you will, as representation of that. So if I may, just because he's near and dear to my heart and he's in a photo in the background of me somewhere here as well, shout out to Matt Nesbitt, offensive line coach for those Queens Golden Gales. Defensively, Tom, where are we going on this one?
Well, I think, just in my opinion here, there wasn't really somebody who head and shoulders stuck out above everybody else in this one. I think across all of these games, for the most part, there was just solid defensive play across the board without having anybody really stand out more than the other, with one exception for me personally, and that goes to Darian Newell, defensive lineman for Queens. This entire time, us and pretty much everybody else who's trying to cover the OUA here is talking about Silas Hubert and how he's coming back. And, oh my gosh, like what's that's going to do for this Queens defense? And then on the other side, you got Van Wishart and, oh my God. But Darian Newell has been a staple for this Queens defense, and he really showed out that he can really perform in this one. He finishes with 5.5 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and a sack. But he was just constantly in the backfield influencing Tristan Lefebvre and the rest of this Carleton Ravens offense. And at one point in time, I believe it was coming close to the end of the first half, they go out into a 30 front, and it's Van Wishart, Darian Newell, and Silas Hubert on the defensive line front.
Disgusting.
That is terrifying. All 3 of those guys can get after the quarterback really effectively. Now, thankfully, Lefebvre recognized that and he got the ball out quick. But man, what a defensive pass rush package with those 3 guys there. But yeah, I'm giving it to Darian Newell.
Yeah, and obviously as an interior guy, sometimes they get slept on a little bit more. Queens obviously no stranger to having guys on the interior be dominant guys like Newell is being this year. And, hey, shout outs to guys like Max Garboneau out in Ottawa for another great performance, and Tyson Hergott, the guys that we just expect week in, week out. But yeah, I think giving him the shout out when we've gotten overwhelmed by the gaudy numbers of some of the other, what Van Wishart's doing, the prospect of Hubert. Yeah, Newell holding it down the middle. Great job by you on the shout out. And last but certainly not least, it's 1/3 of the game. It is our special teams player of the week. And Thomas is someone we've talked about perhaps even being his team's MVP in many ways so far this year. Who are we going with?
Yeah, I think when you talk about how well somebody has played consistently week in and week out, and especially if you're looking at anybody who's playing in maroon, it has to be kicker Michael Horvat. I mean, solid day kicking the ball, 2 for 2 in field goals, 2 for 2 in extra points for a total of 9 points. But his punting has really been off the charts this year. Now, obviously, he's had to punt quite a fair bit to showcase this, but 14 punts for a total of 589 yards, including 4 of which inside the Waterloo 20-yard line. That is outstanding work by one Michael Horvat here for these McMaster Marauders, and he's been a solid staple for that special teams unit all year long. So my pick goes to Mr. Horvat.
And I'm going to piggyback right off of that one. Once again, Charles Esland with an incredible punt return, setting up Ottawa on their final drive to bring the game within a score's reach. But those are our players of the game. And that's actually, I was going to transition us smoothly into that Waterloo McMaster game. And I probably could have and then saved the standings talk for the end of the episode. But Tom, when you run through the standings, and the reason I want to do this is so right now we have Western Laurier at 6-0, Windsor at 5-1. Then we have Queens, Guelph, and Ottawa all sitting at 3-3. Carleton, Toronto, and Waterloo at 2-4, and with Mac close behind there at 2-5, and then York at 0-7 at the bottom. And I guess just a general comment I want to sort of, or question or comment or a mixture of both is, we think back to how we broke it down into tiers at the start, and it was Western and Queens at the top. And as we've talked about, you play the season through 10 times, 9 out of those 10 times, or maybe 8 of those 10 times, Queens is 5-1 right now. Maybe 6-0, right? Injury bug playing such a role on their season as it obviously has. I mean, heck, we could probably say something similar about, Guelph and Ottawa even. But we kind of looked at that Western, Laurier, Queens, and Ottawa as sort of our top tier teams. Windsor, I'm trying to remember, was it Windsor and then Guelph we had? Anyways, I want to come down to this. The fact that we have, those 3 teams that we've kind of been talking for a few weeks in Western, Laurier, and Windsor kind of cut above, and a few of these kind of frisky teams like Queens, like Guelph at times when they're looking healthy. Ottawa now, perhaps they found their guy. Carleton, when that passing game is going. We really liked Waterloo for a bit. The fact that we have only 3 teams above 500 this year. In your estimation, when you look at that, and I think I know what your answer is because I feel like we're on a similar page on this. Does that speak to does that speak to 3 teams that are cut above, and then truly that idea of tiers where it's A-tier teams and then it's like we don't really have anyone really contending? Or do you feel like there's a lot of teams in that B tier? So really the notion that we have all these teams at either 500 or, winning 1/3 of their games right now. Does that speak overall to a healthy OUA right now? Or do you think that, we still have these 3 teams that no one outside of them can really mess with?
No, I think if you're watching these games, this is a very healthy OUA right now. Like Western 6-0, they have earned that 6-0, but how many of those games, obviously with the exception of the York game week 1, were like it came down to like a possession in the fourth quarter, or at the very least coming down into near the end of the third quarter, and it's still close. They're still going back and forth. McMaster at 2-5 goes with Western and has a chance to run down the field at the very last moment of the game to win it. Now, obviously, Western comes up with a pick 6 and everything, but like a 2-5 McMaster team has been in the game with all of these teams here so far. I think Queens is right there as well. They lost the first game of the season by 1 point to a very solid Laurier squad that's 6-0 right now. So yes, if you look at the standings overall, sure, you get 6-0, 6-0, 5-1, 3 3-3s, 2 2-4s, a 2-5, and a 0-7. And maybe that doesn't look great. But if you're actually watching these games here and you see the competitiveness in each and every single game, with the exception of a few, mainly the 0-7s team that's at the bottom there, but the majority of these games have really been exciting and they've been close. How many times has Carleton came out so close against Western, against Laurier, and obviously against Ottawa as well, and they get one bounce in each of those games. Now suddenly we're looking at them like they're 5-1. So it's so close, and the play in the OUA right now has just been outstanding from a fan standpoint as well as the play on the field. It's just been so great to watch. So yeah, I think that this is a very healthy OUA right now.
I'm completely with you right there. And let's throw in as well, Waterloo almost taking Ottawa out in week 1, right? Don't be fooled by that score. That was a late onslaught put on by the GGs to make that score really what it was. And it's what we have now, I think, in the OUA, to exactly how you beautifully broke it down, is years where you say, and we've said it for years, we've said it this year multiple times, you take off the very top, you take off the very bottom, and it's an absolute melee. It's a brawl, right? This year, it's you take off the bottom. And now we're cooking with gas. Because as you said, you take York out of the equation, last place is McMaster. First place is Western. You already went through that quick little recap of how that game finished off. You have Waterloo, you have Windsor in the 3 seed, where don't be fooled by the outcome there. Waterloo is in that. So yes, I think, and for people who follow our podcast, for people who follow our content, I think they realize those things too. I don't know how many people are tuning into our podcast or watching us on the video. Shout out to you, but that are looking at the standings and just being like, oh, must be a weak year for the OUA. This might be one of the strongest years we've seen as far as dispersal of talent. Let's asterisk this conversation, and maybe we'll do a little historical dive into that and recruit the likes of the Ken Wallers in the world to help us figure out where we could have a comparable conversation. It comes back to one of those questions that was thrown at us about like just the class of quarterbacks that we have balling out right now across the board. But I just wanted to take a second to look at that because I just pulled up the standings just to kind of have it on my computer. I was looking and I'm like, that's weird, but like it's weird in, I think, the most wonderful way. I think the AOA is in a very strong position right now. So let's hop into our games. And as we were saying, we're starting with the 1:00 game from Friday, which were the Warriors losing to your Marauders in Hamilton. Final score in this game: McMaster 31, Waterloo 19. Tom, the first comment has to be about the quarterback position for McMaster. No Keegan Hall in this one. And in some regards, we kind of, going back to their game against York where they take out Hall after the first half, and then we see guys like Narancic, and I guess Thalman was in that one. I know they went to a third quarterback, assuming it must have been him. Give them a bit of run, and obviously it pays dividends. And as you highlighted texting me this morning, it really goes deeper than that as far as guys they were missing. So let me give you first shot at kind of talking about that piece of it and what you saw from Mac on offense. To just get this rolling, because I think that's got to be like what most people were wondering about watching this was, where's Keegan Hall? Where is the Max offense in this one?
Yeah. So key players out for McMaster this week, all of them on the offensive side of the ball. Like you mentioned, Keegan Hall, no Jacob Patton. Jacob Mason actually got called up to the Alouettes. So I think his season might be just done regardless of where Mac finishes. And even now, like we've kind of been saying, it's going to be a stretch for them to make it to the playoffs. But regardless, their star fullback is now gone, along with James Priestner. So like, that's a lot of the McMaster offense that has struggled in this one. And in this game, already I'm coming out into this thinking, well, both of us picked Waterloo to potentially win this game. And the first play, kickoff, bounces off the McMaster returner's chest. Waterloo recovers it. One play later, it's 7-0 with like 7 seconds into this first game. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a bad one. This could be really bad. But regardless of all of the things that we just kind of detailed there, finally saw some life in this McMaster offense, which was just so nice to see, at least in the first half. I actually liked everything that I saw. The numbers don't exactly help out Steven Narancic, but obviously, like, it's very clear that the chemistry kind of across the board for these Marauders is not there. And I think that comes back down to how many guys they have had out. Now, obviously, even with everybody healthy, they've still kind of struggled with that. But then you add in taking out 4 players that are legitimate contributors to this McMaster offense. And then suddenly you have a guy like Steven Narancic who goes 4 for 13 and 53 yards. So there was a lot of things that didn't go well, but obviously McMaster was able to do enough to get the scores here. The thing that I want to highlight, and I hope that the coaching staff, not whether it's Potasic, whoever else does this for this McMaster offense, Braden Kelly's touchdown and Aiden, I believe it was Aiden Nemeth, or maybe it was Steven Narancic. They rush into the end zone, and I think each one of them was like a 12-yard or 13-yard or something along those lines. So it was more than just a first down, but every single offensive lineman has a hat on a hat. They're not moving bodies out of the way. You don't have to pancake everybody buddy, but you've got your guy, you've held him up, and you've got skill players in the back end who can make things happen. And then Braden Kelly finds a way, gets into the end zone, and scores a touchdown. Just show that consistently to this offensive line and say, this is all you have to do. Hat on a hat, block your man, and the skill players behind us are so damn good that they can make it work. That's really what I love to see out of this one, where, you know, you look at the stats here and it's not the cleanest game, but the boys in maroon get another W.
Yeah. You know, and great job by their offense piecing it together with all those guys missing. And, you know, what a performance by one Everett Reed. First year player, just making things happen in the return game for them for one. And then I think it was only showing one reception. I thought he had a couple more than that one. And so in many ways, you're at that stage of your season where, I mean, like I guess that's the thing with them winning this game. Mac is going to be, as you kind of set this up weeks ago, Mac's going to be sitting at Ron Joyce in their locker room as a team watching really in depth. Well, I guess they're playing next week, but, you know, having eyes on that Carleton Waterloo game next week. But then in their bye week in week 9, watching U of T and Waterloo duke it out with that possibility of making it in and then figuring out what the tiebreak situation is. But as good as a job as their offense did piecing this together, and, you know, your back's up against the wall from the jump, their defense did such an amazing job. And this Waterloo offense, you know, purely by the numbers, they're held to 250 yards of offense, which is, I forget, I had the number up earlier. They're averaging 392 yards. So just shy of 400 yards of offense per game. That's 150 below their average. But obviously what's more outstanding than just purely their full offensive output is, we've talked about them, that they have been around the top and at times at the top of the rushing ranks as far as team production. Now they're sitting at 209 yards per game. That was much higher a week ago because Mac holds them to 85 yards. And I give a lot of credit to Mac's defense, but I was also like, Nick Orr threw the ball 26 times. Has he thrown the ball 26 times combined in the rest of the season? He might not. He probably has. But like, it is hyperbolic though that might be, I was just very confused by that, because we've talked about how Mac's defense is really good, especially so in the back end. You have guys like Anthony Miller and Quentin Springer, and then, you know, they'll bring in like Justin Sukar for like a couple sweeps and things like that. That's where your offense is best. And we've seen this Waterloo team, even in games where they're much more down and out than this one. I mean, despite, you know, well, not even the final score is not out of reach. Like this was a winnable game for Waterloo. Absolutely. I mean, obviously going into it, we picked them, and there was no point in the game where it's like, wave the white flag. This is clearly over. It really baffled me why they went away from their run game. It really, like, at times where, you know, they're throwing a little more on first down and then maybe getting an incompletion, and you get that second and long. So now you're having to perhaps be in a more pass type situation in there. But it really baffled me, and it kind of made me think about some of the commentary we were talking about, where in the Ottawa Carleton game, where maybe it's like, do the thing they don't think you're going to do, and maybe you catch them off guard. But at the same time, you might just be playing into their hand, because your passing game, despite having a guy like James Basiliga, is the weaker component of your offense. Where on the flip side, you have one of the best rushing attacks, 85 yards. They only rushed it 2 more times than this Mac team, which, if we know one thing about this Mac team, out of all the weird things that's gone on with them, they certainly don't run the ball well, let alone want to run the ball that much. I didn't go back to watch this game after watching it on the Friday. And so maybe there's something, because I know you were reviewing a lot of these games in our prep for this one, that I'm missing and trying to think of, like, you know, was it just because Horvat was pinning them deep so much that maybe, but once again, we've seen them in games where they're down and out and they're still like, no, we run the ball because that's what we do really well. Tom, what do you make of Waterloo's offensive attack against the Marauders?
Yeah, it was certainly strange to see that on paper. But really watching this team, and obviously we've talked about it before, that Waterloo's bread and butter. Obviously, they can run a number of different kinds of run plays, whatever else. But if you get push comes to shove and you need to go on what you rely on, it's power run games. Now, with that, specifically in the power run, it's counter tray, which involves whether it's your center or your guard and your tackle pulling around the horn in order to try to create some gaps and get some additional blockers at the point of attack for your running backs. That's all well and good, but that takes a while to set up in the backfield. And consistently in this game, I saw Drake Bodie, I saw Ryan Leader, and Mitch Price, all of these guys, defenders for McMaster, constantly getting into the backfield while this is kind of going on. Now, you can see it almost sets them up that way because the very first play of the game, like I said, when Waterloo scores that touchdown, it's a counter tray. And I believe it was Anthony Miller takes the ball into the end zone for them to open up the scoring. It's 7-0 with like 7 seconds left to go. And you go, okay, that's really what this Waterloo team wants to do. And like Miller hits the hole and there is no one around him. I think they perfectly timed it up because Mac was blitzing into that and they just had a guy on a guy. And so there's no one at second level and he takes off. But then suddenly you're starting to take a look at things and you're like, oh, Ryan Leader, defensive end for McMaster, he can be a bit of a load, and so he's stopping those pulling guards right in their tracks. And now suddenly there's nowhere to go for Quentin Springer Quentin Springer or Anthony Miller in the backfield. Get guys, fast linebackers like Drake Bodie coming up there and making tackles, and so you see that pretty consistently. And I think just naturally how the game kind of progressed, Nick Orr, while he does throw it 26 times, he technically was supposed to throw it like 36 times, but he just takes off and run with it for his 10 rushes because none of those were planned for sure.
Yeah.
But he's a good enough athlete in order to, I think he has a great sense of decision-making when it comes to taking off and running and how to run, whether that's taking a slide or trying to go for an extra few yards or that. But he finishes with 10 rushing attempts for 30 yards. And a lot of those came in key scenarios where he was getting a lot of pressure or there's nobody downfield. He saw an opportunity, he just kind of took off and run with it. So they really like this kid, Nick Orr, and they want to put the ball into his hands. Now, he finishes 14 for 26, 107 yards and 2 picks. So obviously there is some stuff that they still need to work out there in terms of his passing game, but I think they wanted to rely on him as an athlete more than anything and trying to make things happen and get things down the field, just because that run game, while it is good, it just takes a while to get going. And like I said, they could run zone, they could run stretch or toss or whatever, some of these more faster hitting plays, but your bread and butter, and it's very clear that power counter tray is what this Waterloo team has sat on, is this is what's going to be our safe space in the run game. And it just takes a while to get going. And if you have fast defenders like McMaster does, it can be very difficult to consistently do that.
No, and that's a great breakdown of it. And, shout out to Ryan Leader. I mean, this isn't just like some dude stepping up. Like, this is a guy that was drafted by Calgary last year. He wears 55. So, I got to give him credit for that. And one of the many McMaster Marauders being celebrated in their senior day. So no doubt a big day for him too. It struck me as odd because I think this was the first game, and they late in the game they go back to Nolan Caban, and like he actually looks really good when he goes in there. Which, my goodness, you have to just be like, just when we thought we figured some teams out, and maybe we're still now figuring it out, but I feel like this is the first game. Because they get that game against Guelph on the back of that running attack, Battle of Waterloo. Hey, like we knew going into that one, like probably wasn't gonna be pretty. The game against Windsor, you're the underdog for sure. We still like some things you were doing on the run game, but that whole idea that like it's still really your run game that you're leaning into, and then obviously the win against York, and now we're getting back into the really early start of the season but this was the first game where they put the ball, by whatever reason, whether it was Mac forcing their hands, once again, shout out to Mac's defense, shout out to Coach Brady, but whether it was a product of Mac forcing their hands or Waterloo trying to find an advantage by perhaps going against the grain somewhat, or recognizing some of their run game stuff wasn't working, where the ball was firmly put in Nick Orr's hands, and he didn't get the job done for them. And, it's still, I think, a big piece for them with making the switch to Nick Orr was, that Caban, despite the production last year, he was turning the ball over a lot. Well, you gave Nick Orr 26 attempts, and as you said, that might have been 36, and he throws for 2 picks and no touchdowns. So, golly, what a just roller coaster of a year this continues to be for the Waterloo Warriors. But as far as consistencies with them, I mean, James Hinsberger has a great game, and Tyson Hergott. My goodness, there was just, he finishes 2 sacks, 4 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss. I think it was either a second and short, third or short, where he just busts right through the line, grabs whichever the running back was, throws him to the ground. I mean, man, oh man. Hey, if you're tuning in for a Waterloo game, just find 9 on the defensive side for Waterloo and enjoy yourself a ball game. Tom, any last thoughts on this matchup here? Does this give you, like, where are you at with your Marauders right now? Does it, talk about roller coasters? I mean, are they still in the doghouse with you? Like, or does this feel like a red herring of being like, oh, maybe it's alive. Despite how well that offense played, you still can't look past those injuries if they were going to make some miracle run into the playoffs, which I'm not even sure is feasible. Where are you at with Mac as we go into what will be their final game of the regular season next week?
Well, listen, no matter how I feel about these Marauders, it is always just nice to see the Maroon get on in the win column. It hasn't happened a lot this year, so it's nice to see them
in the last 2 years.
It hasn't been a great few years to be a McMaster football fan. Let me tell you that. But it is nice to see them getting a win as an alumni myself, and watching them kind of do some things there. There's a ton that they need to clean up, and there's a lot of things that, like, certainly you always wanted to focus on, this is our team, this is our stuff, we got to focus on ours, whatever. But like, there's one play that sticks out for me really well, and I think it might have been that third down or that second down play that you were just talking about with Tyson Hergott. Like, McMaster goes into a double tight set, and it's very clear, hey, we got 2 yards to go, we want to get a first down, whatever. But like, I know you want to think about, hey, it's our team, it's our guys, it's whatever, but the tight end that you put on Tyson Hergott is first-year player Nathan Denkers, who I think is going to have a really positive season or positive future at McMaster, but he's a first year taking over for Jacob Mason, obviously not having a ton of playing experience, and you put him on arguably the best defensive end in the country, and he does his thing. Hergott blows off the ball and tackles him in the backfield, and suddenly you're having to either kick a field goal or punt. I can't remember the situation directly afterwards, but I'm staring at that being like, guys, let's just focus a little bit more on some personnel here. Like, I know we've got a lot of pride, but like, let's just, and so there's a lot of things there, whether it's from a coaching standpoint or whether it's from a player standpoint in terms of the chemistry and things that I definitely want to see get better and better. The one nice thing or positive thing that I'm taking away from this one is because of those injuries on offense, a ton of guys got a lot of chances to play, which is, I saw a lot of, like I said, Nathan Denkers was in there. Obviously we've seen stuff from Matthew Gale before. Everett Reed really comes off for these Marauders as well. A lot of like first and second year players coming up and getting game experience. And like you and I have said, game experience is so much, it's not much more important. It's so much more valuable to have valuable game experience rather than just practicing 100%. And now you get a chance to see, hey, you know what? The other guys on the other field, like going up against that Waterloo defense, yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty fast. They're strong as hell. And now I have a basis of, if I want to consistently, going back to Denkers, if I want to be one of the top defensive or fullbacks in this game, I have to be prepared to block guys like Tyson Hergott. So I got to get stronger. I got to get faster. I got to get bigger. I got to make sure that I know my playbook. And that, if anything, should be a motivating factor to a lot of these young guys. So here's hoping that whatever happens for the rest of this season, like I said, it's a very, very unlikely that McMaster's going to make it into the playoffs again this year. But hopefully they get more and more opportunities for these young guys to get some more playing experience and to get something positive rolling into the 2024 season. So that's my final thoughts on this game from the McMaster side of things.
No, love it. And hey, I'm sure most of us who played it, well, really any level of football, have that time, have that experience of you get that play where you get sunned a little bit. Save that on your phone, make it your opening home screen, and just all off season when you're hitting the gym and maybe you don't feel like you got the juice one day to go into it. You just look at that photo of getting beasted by, as you said, perhaps one of the best DNs in the country, and maybe it just gets you going a little bit more, a little bit that adrenaline through your veins.
One last thing, Nathan Denkers, just so that you feel a little bit better. My Sun moment, 2014, first time I get a chance to play. I think it was the second play of the game. We do a toss to the left, and Mr. John Rush catches me as I'm running and just blows me up, gets into the backfield, makes a big play. So yeah, it happens to the best of us, and I'm certainly not some of the best of us. So don't feel too bad about that. It happens. Just keep going, get a smile on your face. It's all about the next play, baby.
Tom, what was your guys' name at One Tech when we played you guys in 2014?
Adam Dixon.
But yeah. Wait, no, that was the big guy. That was your 3-tech. Your 3-tech. My bad. The more
the 3-tech, Kevin Allenek.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, that was a brutal off season for me. Anyways, for the McMaster Marauders, as we said, they go into their final game of the season when they travel to Ottawa to take on the Gigi's at TD Place next week. And for the Waterloo Warriors, they're returning home to take on the Carleton Ravens. And hey, let's talk about them a little bit. They were playing football on this weekend, taking on the Queens Golden Gales. They were in Kingston, and final score in this one, the Queens Golden Gales 35, the Carleton Ravens 16. Tom, this one, kind of like we said with the MAC game, the number one thing, one of the first things you had to be looking for is who was at the quarterback position for, in the tricolors. And we had Russell Weir in this one. And in some ways it confirms my suspicion that the appearance of Mr. Leo in their game against York was just for the poetry of having a guy named Leo take out the Lions. Maybe Weir got hurt against Windsor the week prior to that. I don't really know. We talked about how that rushing game went off. We saw the return of Silas Hubert as we were speculating, from some of the insiders that, were messaging us. And how do you feel about this Queens team right now? And obviously, there's the context of who they were playing, but do you feel, because they go 7 for 9 with Russell Weir, right? I mean, efficient, sure. 1 interception, no touchdowns, right? They live and die on the ground in this one. And obviously they run it with as proficient an attack as anyone has, perhaps as one of the best rushing performances people have had. And as we said, going into this one, Carleton's rush defense has, by the numbers, ranked towards the top of the OUA, though, as we also highlighted, they're going to a gauntlet of taking on Queens and then Waterloo and then Guelph to finish their season. So some really strong rushers, but they did a good job against Amilcar Polk. Has Queens at this point, once again, not knowing the full status of Rican, proven to you that on the back of if you threw all those flowers at Jared Kasari's feet, and very deservingly so. And hey, Anthony Souls is an incredible rusher as well, and a great 1-2 combo. When when it kind of like what we talked about with Western last year, there are times where Kasari busts a big run and they're like, oh, okay, they're gonna take him out, but it's Anthony Souls coming in, so it's like not much of a reprieve for the defense. On the back of this stellar defense for Queens and one of the best rushing attacks, if that is what they have to rely on, if we don't get Vreeken back and they're just going to kind of game manage it with, I assume Weir's their guy, between him and Leo, how far can has this Queens team proven, do you think, that they can be in that Yates Cup challenging for a trip to the national semis and perhaps to their home Vanier, just on their rushing attack and with how good this defense is and getting better, of course?
You know what? I'm going to say no. I think that this defense is legit. I think that this run game is amazing. Don't get me wrong here. But like, you look at across the board, when you really start talking about who's going to be in the big show for the OUA. And Taylor Elgersma looks pretty damn good. And oh, by the way, Tanner Nelms and Quentin Scott, yeah, they're pretty damn good as well. Who's on the other side in purple? Oh, yeah, Evan Hillock and Keon Edwards. Yeah, that's a pretty solid 1-2 punch from the pass and from the air. So I'm very, very happy for Queens in this game. Really, like, they had gone through a number of games there where they had injuries, they had stuff that they were kind of happening off the field and on the field or whatever else, and they finally put together. This was a really solid team win first and foremost. Like we said, Jared Kasari does his thing up for the run game, but that offensive line really did a lot of things really well. Anthony Souls goes for 98 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then Darian Newell and that Queens defense, like, they do really solid here. But you like, it's not enough to just have those two components. You need to have a consistent answer in the air, because the top of the top, and even, I know that Danny Skelton has kind of struggled in the past couple of games as well, but like, I would still put him somewhere in that top 5 of OUA quarterbacks, certainly. And that's kind of, that the whole piece. You've got the defense, the run game, and the passing game. That's why we've got 3 teams at, 2 teams at 6-0 and 1 team at 5-1. I just don't think that on its own, this is enough to get Queens back into the Yates Cup for the 3rd year in a row. Now, they still have some time here to get Russell Weir up and running. I think we're pretty safe to say that this Queens team is going to get into the playoffs this year, but I need to see some more in the pass game before I start saying, this Queens team can make it back through some of the best teams in the OUA in Western Laurier and Windsor.
No, I think that's a fair point. Those top teams are so well-rounded that it's hard to compete with only really one aspect of your offense clicking. And it goes back to that thing we've talked about of like, but then why not maybe try and let Weir loose a little bit more? Unless, as we said, maybe they know that Vreeken's going to be good for week or the first week of playoffs, and they're just sitting on that. But you brought up Danny Skelton's name, and obviously the first outing we saw him struggle a good piece in was that game against these Queens Golden Gales, I guess 2 weeks ago or just over 2 weeks ago. But you go through Queens's appearance throughout the season, and Evan Hillock still has a strong game. Taylor Elgersma, despite not finishing in that game, he was something like, I was looking at it earlier this morning, he was like 30 for 39, no touchdowns, 1 interception, but still making plays happen where, those real top dogs out there in the league, and hey, they still got to go through my guy Josh Jansen to end their season, which is going to be a massive game when it comes down to all the seeding and things like this, and maybe a home field game, a home game in the first round of the playoffs. But it's that defense is really stellar. But yeah, I think on the whole it will be tough for them just with the run game. But let's look at because not for nothing, they did a pretty good job of stifling Tristan Lefebvre in this one, right? And Lefebvre is a guy that we've really enjoyed what they're doing, and I think with Carleton, it's noteworthy. I think maybe similarly with some of the commentary we were just saying about Waterloo, of getting really excited about some of the things we saw from them this year, and then maybe going from being like, oh, this is a team that has some nice pieces, and then next year is the year where we start to have those serious conversations about them, to maybe getting a bit ahead of our skis and being like, oh my God, no, they put themselves in a position to control their destiny this year, and just being like, whoa, but still pump the brakes. It's kind of whatever we might get from some of these teams, like a Waterloo, for example, or Carleton. I think it's a bit ahead of schedule. So at the end of the day, I think that's still worth noting. So let's look at them by the numbers. Lefebvre, 22-33, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. We're seeing what they're doing in the backfield. Obviously, still not the predominant method by which they try and move the ball. Gale and Ferguson in there, and it's still this multi-faceted passing attack as far as the guys like Kasim Ferdinand and Tristan Reddy and Brown and Hatchie in the mix, and a few other guys in here. For where we're at with Carleton right now, and the playoffs are still a very viable option for them. They're right in that sweet spot of teams that we talked about, as far as in that kind of 3-3, 2-4 mix, and with them finishing up their season with Waterloo and with Guelph very much in control of their destiny. What sort of from watching them go up against one of the top defenses in Queens this week and seeing what their defense was, I mean, quote unquote, able to do, Queens got what they want on the ground. How are you feeling with Carleton right now after where we saw them starting the year with such great outings in losses to Laurier and Western, some really nice bounce back wins? They're in a competitive Panda game, and now they get this game against Queens where the rush defense can't quite hold up. And Lefebvre has, not his A game by any means. Where are you at with Carleton right now with what we've seen through 7 weeks of them?
I think they've got so many really fantastic pieces on this team, even specifically on that offense. It's kind of funny when you're looking at this game. It's kind of the exact opposite from both of these teams here. Like Queen attempts the pass 9 times and rushes 51 times. They go 75 yards in the air and 367 on the ground. And then you look over on the Carleton side of things, 282 in the air and then 39 rushes on the ground. So it like a very different mentality in that point. But like when you see this Carleton offense, Tristan Lefebvre is obviously playing really well. Kasim Ferdinand is great. Harvey Mafuda had some fantastic catches in this one. I thought I like to see him kind of getting a little bit more into this. Aiden Arnott-Smith, he had an okay game. I think he gave up a fumble that Queens was able to get as well. So there's a few things here and there. Tristan Reddy did well, but like, when you look at this Carleton team as a whole, you see some certain players that are there, and you see like these breakout stars, like Lefebvre can be, and then Ivy on Onyeka on the other side of things. Like he's just playing outstanding. And some of the things that I saw him do against that Queens offensive line that I think is actually pretty good was just, oh my God, Onyeka is damn good. But like all of those pieces in play here, and then you take a step back and you look at the standings, and you're 2-4. And you've beaten Toronto and York and lost every other game other than that. And you're thinking like, when are you going to put this together? When are you going to start beating the teams that you're competitive with and not just the teams that you should beat? Goes back to the same thing that we were saying last year. This team finishes 5-3 and they don't beat a team above 500. And it's the same issues going with Carleton. They've got pieces here. I really like the secondary that they have from the offensive side of things. Like, I think that they've got the pieces in order to be in these games. And in all of those games, they were in the game against Laurier, against Western, obviously the Panda game. This one a little bit less so, but still, like, they had every opportunity to try to get back there and try to be in that conversation. But when you have to take the next step. The best teams in the OUA right now, and like we've kind of already said, the top teams, yes, they're 6-0, 5-1, but like it came right down to the wire. And one of those games for each of these have been with Carleton as well. But the top teams found a way to win and found a way in order to get things going. You need to make sure that you have something, you have that X factor that you can take the next step, because we just haven't seen that from Carleton in the past couple of years.
No, I love that you compared that to last year, because I think they're in a very similar position. And I do think, though, that they will have a worse record than last year. But I think much like the exercise we took of just going through the standings as a full 10,000-foot view of the OUA as a whole and being like, look at some of these teams, like by the record, it looks like a weak year, but actually being like, no. When you go below the surface and actually take a look at what's going on, we have some really strong teams. I think there is a very good case to be made that while they might end up, I don't know, they could end up 4-4, right? They could be 4-4 and be in the hunt for maybe a home playoff game. I don't know if 4-4 will get you a home playoff game, but nonetheless, it'd be really, I think it's kind of up in the air. They could be 3-5 and maybe still fighting for a playoff spot, tooth and nail with all the crazy, tiebreaker stuff. But I say all that and saying that they're 5-3 last year. I honestly think that if we sit back at the end of the season and compare that to the 5-3 record from last year, whether it's 3-5 or 4-4, or gosh, God forbid if you're a Raven fan, 2-6. That's if it's 2-6. All right, if they finish 2-6, this season was demonstrably worse than last year. That is the only situation that I think they got worse. I think whether they pull off a win against what is it? It's who do they have next week? It's Waterloo and then Guelph, and then Guelph to close it out. I think they're showing a lot of that progress going forward. For one thing, they have figured out, their new quarterback, their quarterback situation. We had no idea who that was going to be, right? Tanner DeYoung's moving on. We don't know, and as you got me so excited earlier on in the season, when it's like, and they also have a certain somebody working as quarterback coach. Who might it be? It might be a former star quarterback named Andreas Duick from the Master Marauders in his ear. Corey Grant and everything that he brings in the passing attack, that philosophy as a whole. And that defense, a lot of really nice pieces there. And you mentioned, Ifean Yeka and what he can do there. We've talked about how much we like Michael Lightbody in the middle for them as well. And I think one of the things that kind of Queens is like a worst case, and Queens is a terrible matchup for Carleton because I think Carleton, much like we've talked about with Mac and with Ottawa, good defenses, great secondaries, though. You look at guys like Louis Laveau, Ottman Braun, Ayamudo back there as well. I'm sure I'm missing a couple names in the mix with them as well. So as you said, what Queens throws the ball 9 times, and Carl's like, no, please throw the ball, right? So in some regards, terrible matchup for them. Of course, it panned out okay going up against an Ottawa team that runs the ball very well. But put all that aside. So I think on the whole, I love that you brought up the comparison from last year. I think they're in a good situation, right? We're not looking at all the eligibility pieces for these guys and where they're all at. But for a team that's very much still in the hunt for a playoff game, and you can say, well, they were in the playoffs last year. Hey, they had a road game on the playoffs last year, and they got the brakes beat off them by Laurier, right? So in the grand scheme of things, when they, as you said, when they went up against a team that was actually a contender, they couldn't hack it. And you put this game aside against Queens, which, like I was saying, I think is a really bad matchup for them. They've been in those games against those top teams. And I think we were saying that they're in that spot to give a Windsor, a Laurier, maybe a kind of butt clenching 3/4 of football in a quarterfinal game in the playoffs type of feel. And I think that that's progress from last year, let alone just the fact that you have Lefebvre, the Corey Grant era, progressing some really nice pieces on the defense, and figuring out and a young offensive line. So on the whole, that's kind of what I was saying, like, much like Waterloo got a bit ahead of ourselves once all of a sudden it's like, well, Waterloo takes that game against Guelph and Carleton. Well, they show these amazing passing outings, but I think on the whole, the record might be worse than last year. I feel still strong about them going into next year, and obviously that tight Panda game and everything like that. Sorry, I got a little distracted from the game itself. Like anything, like in this actual matchup, as you said, it wasn't a terribly tight game. On the whole, but anything else that struck you in this one, sort of pertaining to these two clubs or where they're at, or any other commentary?
Yeah, the one other thing that I wanted to kind of highlight here, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this game was finally showcasing some of the amazing factor that we saw from Kasim Ferdinand last year. He goes 7 catches for 95 yards and very clearly has become, in this game at least, was Tristan Lefebvre's go-to person. There was a couple of times where Lefebvre is getting pressured in the backfield and he throws up a prayer and Ferdinand comes down with it. He fights off a few Queens defenders in order to come down with it, and really just showcasing how well he can be when he's properly utilized. Not even properly utilized, but when he actually has some space, because I'm sure every other team has seen what he's done to them last year and went, you know what? Carleton might beat us, but Kasim Ferdinand's not going to be the guy to beat us. So we're going to double team this guy, or we're going to do whatever to try and make sure that he's contained. I was happy to see him kind of get going a little bit. Like I said, I like the things that I saw from Harvey Mafuda, but yeah, like we go back to it in this game, Queens is very, like, from the get-go, it was very clear that Queens, I think, is the better team here. And I think even without the great passing attack, and, the Golden Gales shut me up because going into this game, I gave the advantage offensively to Carleton. And even despite the fact that Russell Weir went 7 for 9, 75 yards and a pick, I think that the offensive win here goes to the Golden Gales. So yeah, Queens comes through when they need to. And I think that goes back to, hey, you know what? We've done this before. We've been in these close kind of games. We've fought against really impressive opponents here and come out on top of this. And Carleton, while having fought against really impressive opponents, hasn't taken that step yet to beat the teams above 500 and to be in that upper echelon of the OUA. And I think this was another factor going into this. So great job, the Queens, coming away with this one. Carleton, you're right there. You are right there. You just got to take that one extra step in order to be there.
Totally. And maybe those guys are in the system for them and we just don't see it, and they're just ready to pop with that extra year of growth and development and everything like that. And I think they're still in a great spot. And I love the point you made about Kasim's outing in this one. It felt like Queens was just kind of like, we'll let you run whatever you want to do. We're gonna lock you down where we can, just knowing our individual matchups and the talent that we have and our schemes and stuff. But we're not gonna overthink this. We're just gonna play you fairly straight up. And I think if Carleton has their way, yeah, Ferdinand's gonna be the guy getting the bulk of the catches. But maybe when teams want to zone in on Ferdinand a little bit more, that's where we've seen such great outings from guys like Reddy and Brown and Hatchie and things like that. So once again, still a ton of talent there. Love what they have on the defensive side of the ball right there. I still believe in the talent Lefebvre has, and certainly believe in Coach Grant. And hey, if Denny Ferdinand, we got it's a broken record. Take a drink when Zach mentions Denny Ferdinand and not being here yet, still not having an answer for that. I got to get on my homework for that one. But as we said, Carleton is going to be heading. Oh wait, where am I? They're going to be heading on the road to take on Waterloo next week. A massive matchup. When you look at the standings, Queens hitting the road to take on Guelph. That I am extraordinarily fascinated about. I can't wait till we get into whatever commentary we have about that one for our week 8 preview coming up later this week. But let's get into the final of the Friday games. It was the Battle of Toronto, the Red and Blue Bowl, the Argo Cup. And said Argo Cup remains with the U of T Blues because the final score in this game was Toronto 57 and York 3. I mean, golly, I think this one's going to be pretty quick. I mean, for one, like York home games are just hard to watch. Mm-hmm. It's not about the commentators. It's not about the product. It's a little bit about the product on the field, but it's just the way it's shot, that 2-camera shot, just kind of sticking out either way from the 55 to each end zone, everything like that. Hey, Toronto, obviously you needed this game. Well, I mean, you were the far and away the favorite in this one. You kind of knew that with that win against Mac, you salvage your opportunity to perhaps be in an interesting game in week 9 against Waterloo, which is a game we highlighted quite a bit ago. And it's now looking that much more interesting with Waterloo losing to Mac after Toronto beat them, and then both sitting at 2-4 right now. And what's kind of crazy is that, by the numbers, and I forget how the OUA tie breaks work, purely in points for, it's actually not a terribly large gap between these two teams. But for Toronto, you took care of business. You did the things that you did what we expected you to do. But when we look at the production, it's still Scott Barnett. He goes 15 of 17, 277 in the air, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They give Kinsale 5 attempts, Lucas Stoikos on the run game with 10 attempts, Adam Williams with 6 attempts. Hey, even if this team sneaks into the playoffs, they're not like, as we said, Carleton being in a position to give a team a scare. It'll just be a lovely kind of cherry on top of a season where, hey, you know what, Toronto did have a pretty tough schedule through most of the season, and it's always a nice thing to see at least one of the Toronto teams play in a playoff game. So maybe it's a moot point, but in a game in which, as we've kind of said all year long when teams play York, you can play your A game, you can play your F game, and you're still going to come away with a sizable win. Yeah, the 57 points are nice, but I'm still left feeling a little cold about U of T offensively, of just what it is that could make them special this year. And maybe there's something still lurking there, but just, Scott Barnett, once again, hey, the efficiency and everything like that, the 2 missed passes he has are going the other way and everything like that. But we've caveated before giving guys credit for their performances against York. Did you feel, and because maybe I'm just reading it wrong, or maybe maybe I watched it wrong. Did you come away from this game feeling like U of T has a little something cooking on offense?
This is tough because, like we've been saying all year long, playing against York, it really is a false positive because you can do anything that you want and still put up 50 points in bare minimum. I think the big thing from this Toronto team is something that you actually pointed out. I think it was a number of weeks ago, but it's the missing factor in terms of those really star receivers that Toronto had last year. Now, nothing against Christopher Joseph, Jake Osteen, Nigel Good, Matthew Westover. Those guys are fine. But when you think back about all of the amazing passing attacks that we've seen from Toronto over the years, whether it was Kinsale Phillip last year or it was Clay Sakara in the years prior, the guys that they had to throw to were really in that upper echelon. And when you had those deep threats there, suddenly you saw a guy like Adam Williams or Lucas Stoikos really go off even more because that defense has to respect what's going on in the back end here. I think that's one of the big things that's really missing from this Toronto team. And Scott Barnett, like you said, 2 interceptions there, but technically every single one of his passes he goes 17 for 17 because even if the other 2 go to the York Lions, he's still completing those. But still, like, for the most part, I think his decision-making skills seem to be pretty good. But once again, a lot of false positives here when you're going up against a squad in York, and they just struggle like they have been all year long.
And one of the interceptions to Avante McCoy.
Yeah.
He's playing defense now for York. Is he playing both ways? Are they still giving him? He still ends up. I don't know what's going on over there. And, much like in their MAC game, U of T scoring points with their defense. I don't know if the OUA, I think the OUA you can filter on defense based on scoring. And let's see, actually right now, dang, it's actually pretty gaudy. Where do you think U of T sits in terms of defensive touchdowns?
Based on everything that we saw in that MAC game and what they did here, they got to be close to the top. So I'm saying 2.
They're 1. How many defensive touchdowns do you think they have this year?
Oh my God. 5?
6 to Queens, Western, and Windsor, all with 2 in second.
Oh my God.
And I don't know what to chalk that up to, right? Because we've also, this is a defense that still gives up nearly 30 points a game, right? It's still a team that, gives up almost 400 yards in the air. And it's not even as if their offense is some stellar beast that teams have been having to throw it on them a lot, and then you just have the ball in the air a few more times and guys to ball hawk it and pick it off. So maybe it just comes down to that, the false positive of playing York and perhaps MAC's worst offensive outing they've maybe ever had a week prior in Toronto at Varsity Stadium. But who knows? Folks more connected to that team, I'm sure, don't love all of our commentary we make about them nonetheless, and they're probably not going to take too kindly to this one as well. For Toronto, though, they're going into this game at Western, and I'm not getting ahead of our preview pod, but just thinking kind of broadly, and no doubt we'll kind of reiterate a bit of this commentary. So right now we have U of T sitting at 2-4. They're going to be 2-5 going into week 9. Where they play Waterloo, and Waterloo in a very important game with Carleton in their Week 8 matchup as well. But just for Toronto in specific, going into Western, going into London to take on Western, what do you think, based on some of the things we know about Waterloo, maybe how MAC was able to attack them, moving the ball with a bit of a makeshift offense? And so in some ways, I'm getting ahead of our preview pod for 2 weeks ahead as well. But just kind of thinking broad strokes about this U of T team to put themselves in a position to possibly sneak into the playoffs. Going into London, what are some of the things you think they need to be getting ready, to perhaps have a shot to take out Waterloo the week after that? Their defense, I don't know what to make of that, but just offensively, do they stick with just, kind of this mix of pass and run? As you kind of joked, Barnett with the perfect completion percentage despite the 2 interceptions. Stoikos getting a bit more of the carries on the ground. Williams still there. What thoughts do you have about U of T going into the final weeks here?
Well, obviously next week has the potential to be a very rough game for these Toronto U of T Blues, with the way that Western has been playing, coming off of a bye week and being rested going into the latter part of their season and things. It's a very dangerous team to go up against this late, and they're going to struggle. I think that's putting it nicely. I think Toronto's going to struggle in this next game. What I think they're really going to focus on here, and especially to build into going into Waterloo, it's focusing a little bit more on the passing attack, because going up against Western defense and even a Waterloo defense, the run defense is very good. And I don't think you've seen enough from Lucas Stoikos or Adam Williams to really rely on them going into this one, saying that these guys are going to win you the game. I think that they lean on Scott Barnett here, and not necessarily to like really air the ball out and to do these amazing things and, chuck it downfield, but just to be consistent. You're aiming to go 15 for 17 and take away those 2 interceptions and just be smart with the football. Know when to throw it down the field, know when to tuck and run with it, just know how to properly play with this team and just keep the ball secure. I think that's really what Toronto is going to be focusing on going into this game, because already, looking 2 weeks out now, as a little bit of a preview, Toronto, Waterloo, obviously the edge goes to Waterloo still with everything that we've kind of seen here. But if you continuously give Waterloo additional chances with turning the ball over, there's no way that you can win this game. The only way that you could possibly win is making sure that you are smart with the football, taking what Waterloo can give you and just finding ways to make that work, sprinkling in a run here and there, obviously, but really this is going to come on the back of their passing game. And I think that's kind of why they've gone to Scott Barnett rather than Kinsale. For whatever reason, Kinsale just hasn't seemed to have had the same energy and just performance that he did last year. So Barnett, being the younger quarterback, trying to get him some more additional reps and things. I think if he's smart with the football going up against a very talented Western defense, doesn't turn the ball over regardless of what the score is, going into the Waterloo game, they can build off of that to potentially upset Waterloo in Waterloo, I believe it is.
I believe so as well. And you certainly know Waterloo is going to dominate time of possession, so that makes those turnovers that much more important. Oddly, and we'll once again probably to say this on our next podcast when we more formally set up Western U of T, oddly, that might be a really weird game where you might have both teams looking past that week where U of T is going to be like, all right, it's hey fellas, let's just get out of this one healthy and try and take out Waterloo, and Western just being like, all right fellas, let's just get up early, get our guys out and prepare for Laurier in week 9, which will just be such a colossal matchup. I was supposed to be at that, and to Mr. Magne Jones, knowing you're going to listen to this, I should just message you. I'll message you as well. I actually won't be able to be at the Western U of T game, though I told you I would be. But we'll have to make sure to link up at a playoff game sometime, knowing that your Mustangs are going to be on likely a nice little run through the playoffs. So as we said, U of T heading into London next week, the York Lions heading into their bye week before finishing off their season on the road against the Windsor Lancers. So let's move in to our final game of the Thanksgiving weekend, the game from the nation's capital with the Laurier Golden Hawks taking out my Ottawa GGs 38-30. Laurier coming off the bye, they move to 5-0 right now. Ottawa falling off from their immensely emotional Panda game win against Carleton, now at 3-2 in this one. My two things, and we already kind of addressed one of them, but my main two things watching this game was number one, and talking about fathers of players, the father of one of the starting quarterbacks in this game, and I wonder who that could be, texted me at some point just saying, just brutal officiating, which, when you look at the numbers, I wonder which team might have thought that in this game. Which team had a 2nd and 40-something backed up on the shadow of their own goalposts? But on the whole, like whether you thought some of the penalties against the Golden Hawks were fair or foul, or if the officiating in general was bad, on the whole, Laurier coming off of a bye week from having such a tremendous start to the season, looking sharp. I liked seeing that. I liked that they looked good when they weren't shooting themselves in the foot, whether it was their own doing or whether you thought it was poor officiating. They moved the ball so well. And on the flip side, you have an Ottawa team where they still have their guy in Amilcar Polk getting 112 on the ground, but they have this dude in JJ, in Josh Jansen, slinging it 20 for 27, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. We've already said those numbers. And of course, whether it's Miracle, whether it's Lecandro, or now whether it's Jansen in there, that Nicolas Gendron is going to have a really good game. Ton of other things we'll get into in this matchup. We've already talked about Jansen a little bit, so maybe I'll pass it to you. Just in general, it's nice getting Laurier back, because we always said most teams when they're on the bye, we kind of miss it a little bit of just like with the various things they bring to the table, and Laurier no less so than any other team with just how dynamic they are in all facets of the ball. How did you feel about their outing, heading on the road, long road trip, everything of that nature, out to Ottawa, coming off the bye, and make whatever you want of the penalties, looking pretty sharp, not looking like there was any rust or sluggishness off of having a week off?
No, certainly not. And once again, we talked about the fact that Michael Faulds is definitely going to make sure that his Laurier Golden Hawks is going to be as prepared as possible going into each and every single week here, just with the fantastic coaching staff that they have, both on the offense and defensive side of the ball here. The big thing that, just taking a second to talk about the penalties. Laurier, 10 penalties for 106 yards. Ottawa, 8 penalties for 80 yards. There is the old adage of technically every single play you could throw a flag for a penalty, whether it's a holding, whether it's whatever else. There is that technicality. Whether or not you should is another aspect of that. But with the exception that maybe there's some up and down calls, whatever, but I think this just kind of goes back to, hey, you know what? We got to play a little cleaner. We got to make sure that whether or not, the old adage of, hey, your arms are on the outside pads of the defender you're blocking, and even if you're not actually holding, it looks like you are, so they're going to throw a flag or whatever the case. Just get yourselves into a slightly better position in order to make those flags a lot harder to throw, regardless of the officiating, however you want to call it, whether it's up or down or whatever else. If you're putting yourself into the best possible scenario, I guarantee you're going to start seeing those flags fall fairly quickly here. Going back into this game and kind of focusing in a little bit more on the quality that we saw here, man, this was a fantastic game. Now, obviously, there was a lot of things that were happening in terms of what was happening to Laurier's side of things, where they have the penalties that back them up. And I believe that was going into the second quarter was like a 2nd and 44. That's what Laurier was kind of dealing with here. But the big thing, Ottawa goes down and they look pretty impressive to kind of end the half, and Amilcar Polk gets into the end zone. It's 12. It's 12 to 11. And then Gendron catches a pass from Josh Jansen. It's 19-11 with about a minute and a half left to go in the game, left to go in the first half. And you go, okay, wow, well, that was really impressive. Ottawa, they really look solid here, whatever. And then Laurier. Now, there was some penalties kind of mixed up in there as well, but they go down the field very, very effectively, score a touchdown, and it's 19-18. They kick it back to Ottawa, and something that I would love to get your opinion on as well in that scenario. Instead of trying to just kneel it out and going into the halftime with some being up a point, Ottawa decides to try to go for a couple of plays. They kick the ball back again, and then Laurier once again drives almost the length of the field, gets into field goal range, and then suddenly you go from 19-11 with a minute and a half left to go to 21-19 going into halftime. And that mentality of we're the Laurier Golden Hawks and we're down a little bit going into halftime. Offense, let's turn it on a bit. bang, 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 and you score 10 points in the span of a minute and a half. And that really showcases to me the explosive power that this offense has when they are humming on all cylinders. We talked about Taylor Elgersma, 22 for 32, 257 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Quinton Scott, 15 rushing attempts, 194 yards and a touchdown against a very good Ottawa defense, albeit maybe a little banged up, but still, Quinton Scott really has. I feel like we've seen him evolve his game in just this year. It was not that long ago, maybe a few weeks ago, that I was talking, hey, like Quinton Scott's first initial reaction to something is to try to bounce it outside and try to go from there. It's like he, once again, they heard us talking here and they wanted to prove us wrong, because the amount of times that I've seen this guy since then, put the ball into his hands, put his head down, run through some dudes, and really just drive his feet to get some yardage here. I think that's where this Laurier squad kind of took some time on the offensively. Obviously, like we said, they didn't score an offensive passing touchdown until week 3. And then the pass side of things really exploded. And I think the run game is really starting to come up here as well, so that they're becoming that full round team offensively. I liked what I saw from the Laurier offensive line for a lot of the time here, going up a very solid Ottawa defensive line as well. So yeah, I really love seeing what Laurier had here. If they can put together what they did in that minute and a half and spread it across an entire game, I don't know, like, they have a very strong possibility to be hoisting a Yates Cup rather than just playing for one.
Most certainly. So I'll go to your comment about Ottawa's strategy late in the first half. That is, in some ways, it's funny because on the one hand, you have that confidence to say we trust our offense, that at the very least we'll move the ball. If we can't get 3, we'll pin them deep. That we can get a little action here going. On the other hand, similar to we've talked about Windsor being a team that you don't want to get down on because they can really put you to bed with their rushing attack. It's another version of trusting your offense and just some of the things your offense does really well, and being able to say, hey, maybe we play it a little safer and know that, hey, Polk really had a really strong game against, we talk about what Scott does against this Ottawa defense. When you kind of scale for what type of defense they were going up against, in some regards, Polk's outing was more impressive just based on, the adversity they were going up against in that regard. So on the one hand, I don't hate it, because I think having that trust in your offense, they're really humming with Josh Jansen. And it was a great comment the broadcaster made in saying that, think about Jansen's 3 starts. His first appearance is a Western homecoming game. His second start is the Panda game. And now he's got a night game at home on Thanksgiving weekend against Laurier. In some regards, he's got one of the best teams in the nation coming into his crib, and he's probably just like, all right, this is cool. Like, and he's a cool customer. He's in there, he just slings the ball. Like, it's no big deal. So, you know what? I like having that trust in him, and I think he's earned it. But at the same time, lean into that run game a little bit more. You can chew up the clock and everything like that. But yeah, for Laurier offensively, and I'm sure our Golden Hawk contingency don't love us giving the quarterback that they beat an offensive player of the week when they're like, yeah, our guy had a really strong game and rushed in for 2 touchdowns as well. It's like Taylor, when you rush in those QB sneaks, man, you're like 6 foot forever, dude. Like, you just have to lean over the pile. You get those touchdowns, all right? We love you, Taylor, and everything. But man, oh man, that touchdown he threw to Raiden Thorne. We've seen some incredible plays this season, and once again, we'll certainly have to take on the task of putting together a top 5 top 10 highlights of the year if the OUA doesn't, and maybe we'll have to do it nonetheless, even if they do. But that one's right up there, and just Taylor showing off. Like, I think when we talk about what makes him so incredible, I think the number one thing is the pure arm strength. Which goes part and parcel with just his frame, and then tie that in with, I think, what he can pick up being like a tough runner and his ability to stay in the pocket and everything like that. But that highlighted one of the other things that, frankly, is maybe the most impressive thing he's done this year to show growth is his accuracy. And like, you know, going back to that Queens game where it's like 30 for 39 or something ridiculous like this, and his passing percentage, I'll pull it up as I'm talking here, I know is among the top of the OUA, if not at the top, but that was your quintessential into the phone booth, dropping it right in there for his guy. Yeah, he's at 75% completion percentage on the ground, which is nuts because he's 60 yards shy of 2,000 yards on the season. Like, it's bonkers that he can be that efficient, that he can be that accurate, I should say, on the amount that they ask him to do. And as you said, it's great, I think, for Laurier fans coming out of this one where, you know, I do think that they showed, as much as it hurts me to say that, like, they are better than Ottawa. You know, I think Ottawa gave them like close to, if not their A game. And as you said, it's a defense that's still really banged up. And they are on their third string quarterback, even if we like them more than what we saw from their second string quarterback. But a pretty good outing by the GGs in this one nonetheless, on all facets of the ball. And Taylor's still out here doing his thing. And just, when this team's humming, they're as scary as anyone. And the only thing I think that can bring me back down to earth from, as you saying, they're looking like a team that might be hoisting that Yates Cup, and they certainly are, is just to remember that we had Western on a bye week. You know, it's like let's not forget about what those Purple Ponies and what Evan Hillock's been leading them all season long. But, you know, tremendous performance on all facets. And, you know, as far as just, once again, you talk a lot about that offense, defensively, like, are we ever going to, like, somehow he's in his first year and I'm already being like, do we talk too much about Ethan Gregorcic? And like, we have at least 3 more years after this of talking about him. Comes up with a massive sack in this game. You know, a couple times where I think you can see a little bit of that youth from him, where he gets, you know, a slightly just out of position, where he's a little aggressive to maybe one gap and then Polk's going the other way. And he's a big kid, and I'm sure just more training at the OUA level will not only make him more physical and stronger, but just the hip mobility, because a lot of the training you do isn't just like, let's bench, let's squat, let's do that. It's that multi-planar kind of movement that you're going to be doing. And I think that'll just take him to the next level. But I mean, him, Brubaker doing their things. I mean, Anya Mendham showing again why, you know, we have him as the DPOY, and what a great back and forth with, you know, him and Carbonneau on the other side. And, you know, another shout out to the commentator really mentioning how Carbonneau's making a lot of special teams tackles. And it really made me think like, oh, you know what? That makes a ton of sense, because I forget who picked him up in the draft, but they probably did say, hey, you know what? Go back for one more year and let's see you on every single special teams a million times over. And you know, with a guy of that status, the team's going to acquiesce to be like, yeah, absolutely. That's what the CFL wants to see from you. We'll give you those, we'll give you those opportunities. But just outstandingly, an incredibly entertaining game. 2 of the top teams in the league showing their best games. And I think for both these clubs, you know, it's kind of like what we said with Windsor versus Western last week, where, hey, Western no doubt's happy with the win, much as Laurier is in this one. And I think even Ottawa, much like I think Windsor was coming off that loss, both of them, situation being the home team losing. I think if you're Ottawa, and I'll let you correct me if you think I'm wrong here, you got to be happy with what you were able to do against one of the top teams in the country in your own house.
Certainly. Yeah, I think this Ottawa squad has really pulled their socks up from what we saw at the beginning of the season compared to here. And, you know, kind of like we've said before, I think the major aspect of, in terms of why, has been the quarterback play. And once again, I would much rather bring somebody up rather than tear somebody down. And I don't want to say anything about Ryan Lacandro. He obviously did the best that he could, and he was dealing with an injury and whatever else. But what we've seen from Josh Jansen, he really seems to be really impressive, and exactly what this Ottawa squad really needs. And then you talk about Max Charbonneau. Well, not only is he leads the league, not just the OUA, all of U Sports, in tackles per game at 8.7, tackles total at 52, and solo tackles at 37. Like, this guy has been all over the field each and every single week for these Ottawa GGs, and really showcasing how important he is to the strength and success of this Ottawa defense. The other thing that I did want to say, make sure that I got a chance to say it here. There's a lot of things that could kind of come into play in terms of, you talk about the best that somebody is in a certain position back and forth. And we can get into that maybe in some off-season content. Right here, right now on this mic, I'm saying Raiden Thorn has the best hands in the entire U Sports. Like, the catches that I have seen him make just in this game, obviously the touchdown pass that we saw was amazing. There was one catch, I believe it's in the second quarter, and Taylor Elgersma throws another great ball, but it's a little high, but once again, only where his receiver can get it. Raiden Thorn comes up, tippy-toe catch with one hand, and at the same time gets his left foot in bounds right at the sidelines to come up with the catch and go forward. And like, as a defender, you're looking at that being like, there's literally nothing I can do to defend against that. The ball is thrown where only his receiver has any chance of just touching it, and then Raiden Thorn extends both his arms and his legs to get one foot in bounds and to catch the ball like he did. The stuff that we've seen from this guy has just been otherworldly this year in terms of the kinds of catches he's been making, and I think that's another huge factor into why Taylor Elgersma has such a high completion percentage. When you're throwing to guys like Raiden Thorn, Ethan Jordan, and Oja Talayo, like, it's still, the ball has to get there, and in no way, shape, or form am I taking anything away from Taylor Elgersma, because he is one of, if not the best player in the OUA, and I'm sure it'll come down between him and probably Mr. Hillock in terms of the OUA MVP this year. But my goodness, Raiden Thorn, have yourself a day. 9 catches, 140 yards, and a touchdown. Just wanted to make sure I said that first and foremost. But everybody else in the OUA for the remainder of this regular season and going into the playoffs, do not sleep on this Ottawa GG team. With the stuff that we have seen from them, with how Josh Jansen has been playing, and Amilcar Polk. We talked about Ethan Gregorchich. One play sticks out in my head. I think it's in the third quarter. Polk grabs the ball. Gregorchich is in the backfield, grabs him by the jersey, and Amilcar Polk literally drags him for 6 additional yards before somebody else can tackle him. And Gregorchich is like 240 pounds. Polk is just such a strong, consistent runner for these Ottawa GGs. And once again, when you've gone through all of the injuries that you have, that this GG team has, especially with the quarterback position, hey, you know what they're going to try and do? They're going to try and run the ball. We should probably try to stop that. And Polk does it game after game after game. Do not sleep on these Ottawa GGs, because they will upset you if you do.
Oh, 100%. And, the one thing that, kind of get ahead of ourselves on the schedule a bit, I mean, something like Gregorchich, Polk, play you're highlighting. I mean, all the great things we've said about 52 for the Golden Hawks. I mean, quite literally, that's a boy trying to tackle a man in OUA football terms. When you compare those two players, they got Mac next week, and you mentioned that Mac plays them tough. Like, this, I think, is a terrible matchup for the Marauders.
Yep,
they can't run the ball to begin with, and even though the GGs are still missing our guy Harnour, like, I think they have. I mean, man, Patrick Cumberbatch is an absolute, like, he is the shadow of whatever receiver he lines up across. He is all over them. And they got, 2 of the best corners in Tolu Ahmed and Kevin Victome, and obviously Patrick's brother Eric is well in the mix, and Manuel Bogia-Gyan and their linebacking core with, Carbonneau. It's such a tough team to pass on. And then that's what makes me so fascinated for that Week 9 matchup against Queens, where, as we said with Carleton, where Queens probably doesn't want to pass the ball anyways. And really, aside from that outing against Windsor, which immensely impressive because Windsor is one of the best running attacks in the league. So the fact that Ottawa slowed them down to the extent that they had, you tip your cap to that. But, even with a guy like Riley Hillebrand on their defensive line, who's probably their best defensive lineman there, and then, obviously a guy like Carbonneau, Abogia-Gyan right behind, some teams have been able to show they can run on them. So it's going to be a really fascinating end of the season where, like I said, with Mac coming in next week, like, as we've seen all year, Mac really, no matter who's in that quarterback, they don't really want to run the ball that much. And this Ottawa secondary is second to none. But that Queens game week 9, which like we said, can have perhaps a home game, playoff game in the balance in that one. So you're absolutely right. Don't sleep on this team, especially now that they have this young guy in Josh Jansen. And, as we always do, we run long on the podcast. We're coming towards the end. We're only at an hour and a half here. This is perhaps one of the shorter ones that we've done, short one game on the week. So maybe it stands to reason. But I can't recall if this was a conversation we had before or when we started talking about players of the week and what Josh Jansen did. But man, oh man, to project into next year, not knowing Ben Miracle's status, you raised the point of like, if you're Ottawa, if Miracle is back next year, that's a QB controversy if I've ever seen one, because Josh Jansen is playing lights out, and it's really exciting to see. And it's if not for obviously guys or coaches like Greg Marshall, and I think that Coach Faulds will certainly be in the mix for Coach of the Year this year, and Coach Cercelli, the Don out there in Windsor, Coach Belfay and what he's been doing the last couple of years with his Ottawa GG program is one of the most impressive things I think we've had in the OUA, and that was one of the cool things when we had Nate on the last 2 years is that Nate got to play, was really familiar with Coach Belfay and get to kind of give us a bit of insights into that. And, maybe something we kind of look into as far as off-season content to highlight him a little bit more, and obviously the historic career he's had as a football person in Canada, just in general. And it's nothing new here. I love what Ottawa's got going, and once again, between them, Queens and Guelph, and maybe throw Mac into the equation now a bit as far as teams that, with pieces missing due to injury and other reasons or what have you, where their upper echelon could be, man, oh man, you have to love what Ottawa's been able to do this year so far. Looking ahead, as we said, obviously for Ottawa, they're hosting the Marauders next week, and then for Laurier, they're hosting the Windsor Lancers. We've been looking at this stretch of games for Laurier since the beginning of time, and so far, Laurier takes care of business against Ottawa. They got Windsor, and then they finished with Western, and as long as they stay healthy, frankly, almost regardless of those outcomes, sure, if they run the table and get themselves a first week bye, and you've read those numbers of teams and how they fare in Yates Cups, getting that bye is pretty spectacular. I think, though, for Laurier, at the very least, as long as you're staying healthy, you go through that gauntlet and you get to sort of test your best against best, and we'll see what teams show or don't show, knowing that, these are the three teams we expect more than any others. Maybe Queens in the mix, depending on the health of certain players, and Guelph's kind of always that perennial wild card depending on their health or what have you, in Ottawa as well. And just once again, just speaking to the depth of talent we have this year in the OUA, I can't wait till we do a more thorough dive into just like what the most recent season that we've had that maybe compares to this is, because it's been so spectacular, and it's been so great being on this ride with you, Tom, all year long. Last thoughts on this game or on the week in general? That didn't mean to sort of wrap that up before you gave you an opportunity to give any other more thoughts.
No, I think it has, well, first and foremost, it has been a phenomenal ride with you as well, my friend. It has just been talking about OUA football week in, week out with somebody else who shares my passion for it is literally the best thing in the world. So quick shout out to you, my friend. I really appreciate it.
Man.
Man, oh man, were we treated to another amazing week of OUA football. Like, I've loved everything that I've seen from so many of these teams here. And once again, you take a look at the standings, it really feels like you don't even have to take away the top. Like you said, take away the bottom, and any one of those teams can beat you on any given day. You really need to make sure that you're bringing your A game each and every single week. And I think for the most part, we've seen that from a lot of these squads here. Going into the last 2 weeks of this season, and I'm already can't believe that the regular season is starting to come to a close here, but my God, some of the games that we have coming up, like you said, you got Windsor, Laurier, Queens, and Guelph, which is just such a heated rivalry that started obviously with the Cheyenne era and everything else. And we'll get into those games next week. But then looking past that, in the final week of the season, you've got Ottawa Queens, you've got Laurier Western, both of those for huge, massive implications in the playoffs. Oh my God, it is a great time to be an OUA football fan, my friend.
No, literally all of those games matter because you talk about the two other games in Waterloo and U of T, Guelph and Carleton are going to have massive implications in terms of playoff seeding. And then frankly, I'll even throw in Windsor at York to see if Kaladia Moosin can break a sack record and just see in general what Windsor can do as far as the totality of their defense going into the playoffs, sharpening up their, whatever various things they want to have, firing on all cylinders. And my metaphors went all over the place on that one, but hopefully you all know what I'm saying. So yeah, that'll be a wrap on week 7. Later in the week, you'll hear us setting up the following week of action. And you had Mac just pulling together an offense out of the absolute ruins of their team and possibly salvaging an opportunity to make the playoffs against Waterloo. Queens just going to that run game against the Ravens. U of T holding on to the Argo Cup, and Laurier pulling out a tight one in Ottawa against a really frisky GG team with this guy and Josh Jansen. And to your point, Tom, it's really that old boxing line of styles make fights in terms of just what each and every one of these teams brings to the table. And we have some teams that are very well-rounded and can kind of get you on all sides. But as we go week in, week out, it's usually these matchups have, well, I like this component of this team against that one. And that's where we get situations where you can have the 10th ranked team in the OUA just by standings giving the 3rd or 2nd ranked team a shot, because it's just a certain component of their game that works really well that might not fare too well for the other team and vice versa. So we'll give you all our thoughts in much more depth as to this coming week 8 in the OUA, the penultimate week of the OUA season. So Tom, can't wait to be talking to you about all those things. Once again, if you are celebrating Thanksgiving or just taking the time to be with friends and family and enjoy some great food, assuming I get this podcast up in time so it's still Thanksgiving Monday, have a stellar rest of your day or whenever you're listening to it. Because as always, thank you for consuming our content however you are doing so. So we'll talk to you later this week at the 55.